Hello, everyone, and we are back for Bridging the Gap Vets Podcast, Episode 3. Andrew Nicastro here, Streamography Studios, and a family member to many veterans, multiple brothers, uncles, grandfathers, one of which my brother's here, Dave Nicastro. Hello, Brother Dave.
Hi, good to see everyone again.
And Adam Kukuru, not a brother, but probably somehow distantly related.
Marine brother.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Marine brother.
Brother Marine.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I know, right? But Adam is the Cape Ann Veteran Services Director. And last episode was really a lot of Adam's world. And I'm excited to say that this episode is going to be a lot of Dave's world. Because one thing we've really been promoting and pitching is storytelling. And these are real stories, the lives that our veterans have lived so that they can get it out and talk about it, but also the community members can hear about it and learn from it themselves. Now, that being said, we like to start every podcast with our mission. So the mission of our podcast is to quiet the stigma of PTS and mental illness while providing compassion and empathy for the life of a veteran. We accomplish this by gaining an understanding of the path these veterans, the family of veterans, and the surrounding community members walk through storytelling, education, and relationship building. Now, you're watching this on the 22nd of March, and there's a reason we chose the 22nd. It's a very significant number in the veteran world. 22 veterans commit suicide a day on average. And so our goal, along with our mission, is to bring that down, even just a smidge. That's a win. If we can bring that down a lot, then we're really accomplishing a lot of our goals. Now, today, we would like to start also with a story that Dave received, right, Dave?
Yeah. Just like we did with Bulldog, the last episode, we want to read something from the former wife of a veteran. So this is from Jennifer O. And then when she watched episode 2, she said it was therapy for her. She really broke down. She broke down while Andrew was talking, because Andrew is again a family member of a veteran, so he doesn't have the same lingo and words that me and Adam have and that the veterans have. So even as he said DD-214, not a DD-214, that's what she thought it was initially until she had to use it for a wounded husband. So I'm going to tell this story. So this is Jennifer O. While a veteran is busy being deployed, the spouse and the family are at home. They're often wondering where in the world their vet is, what they're doing, and are they safe? Every time a news anchor reports of a military incident, you pray it's not your vet. I got the phone call that I dreaded, and he was hurt, and he was hurt bad. I wondered how war affected him, how his injury would change him. And before he even came home, I longed for the version of him that I even sent away. Life would never be the same, and it would be changed forever. In his mind, I was home safe, not being impacted by his deployment. His injuries progressed, and it was time for surgery at Walter Reed. The damage was more extensive than they ever imagined, and they're doing everything they could. How I watched him in excruciating pain during the first months of recovery, feeling helpless. I remember how eventually he asked me to stop coming to the appointments at the VA hospital. He didn't want me to see the amputees, the guys in physical therapy that were learning how to adapt to their injuries. He thought it was too depressing for me to see, but in hindsight, it depressed him. He never wanted to be one of those guys struggling at physical therapy and at the VA. How I mourn the loss of who he used to be. How his attempts to compartmentalize and save me from what he went through, it just made him more distant. How it diminished and devaluated what I endured and what I went through. I went through his deployment too. I was at war with him, and I had worry, fear, and I was feeling alone constantly. He dealt with his physical, mental, and emotional trauma all alone, which left me feeling like I had to do the same. If he had opened up and admitted he needed help, it would have been an opening for me, that I needed to admit I was scared and I had trauma of my own. But instead, this pulled us apart. It could have been something we shared and worked through together, but it wasn't that way. My message to vets is that no matter how hard you work to compartmentalize and protect your family from what you're going through, they are always affected and going through their own version of it as well. Please get help from someone who can help you process your experiences. This will create an environment where your family feels equally safe, and then they can admit that they need help too. Thank you, Jennifer O. She is divorced. Being part of that D club, the divorce club, is very hard, and I know how that's affected her. So thank you for sharing this. You were very vulnerable and open. You've told me that the last episode and these episodes have been therapy for her. So thank you for sharing this, Jennifer.
Yeah, and as a family member of a veteran, I'm learning this. I'm learning through this experience myself, as far as what my brother's gone through, what my other brother's gone through, and there really is a lot of therapy here for the family members and the community members, which we've talked about this, how my military ignorance can be considered a beautiful thing, because I'm relating to a lot of people. Yeah. So Jennifer, thank you so much for writing in. I want to honor that as well. And Adam, do you see that a lot as far as family members almost needing their own form of connection and therapy through this process?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to, thank you, Jennifer, for your service as well. I think that is something we often overlook, is remembering the service that our spouses and our children and mothers, fathers, family members all go through. And I'm sure you can relate to that to some experience of what it's like to have a family member deployed. Certainly it's much heavier on Jennifer as the spouse to really be carrying that full weight of the pack at home. But, to some degree, I'm sure you can understand that as a family member. And, I don't think we take, as the veteran, it takes more for us to understand that. I think dealing with our own traumas, I think we kind of overlook the burden we've kind of placed on our spouses. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much there, and recognizing its significance and importance to the healing process, not only for us, but for them, and understanding what they've gone through and what they've witnessed. And, again, it hits home, knowing, my wife's gotten a similar phone call, from the Marine Corps when I was injured in Afghanistan, and what that must have been like for her. And, just trying to put myself in their shoes of just day in and day. I can't do it. I can't do it. So
that's right.
I can't imagine what she's gone through, what my wife's gone through, what my kids have gone through.
That's right.
And all I can say is thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for being there for us. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and you kind of mentioned the D Club. It's not easy, and we do need to recognize the weight that our spouses carry and what they can carry. And when, sometimes it's for the best and they can work through it. Sometimes we can't, but either way, we have to appreciate what they, what they carried as well.
That's right.
And as we're moving through today's podcast, I want to throw out a few calls to action. We always do this as we go along as well. First and foremost, if you would like to connect with us, we have an email. And so that email is bridgingthegapvetspodcast@gmail.com. For those of you watching this versus listening on Spotify, there is a QR code on your screen. So if you just open your camera app and just hover it over the QR code, it'll pre-populate an email that will go right to us. So if you just want to talk to us, get some stuff out there, just tell your story in a safe, intimate environment versus obviously it being publicly available, that's what that email is for. It goes to us. If you feel like you would like to connect with Cape Ann Veteran Services, then reach out to Adam and his team, either directly with a phone call, or you can go to their coffee social, which is Fridays, 8:30 to 10 a.m. at the Cape Ann Veteran Services office. It's a wonderful time. Dave has gone. I have gone as just a community member. Everyone is welcome. And then lastly, if you're in a crisis, whatever you define as a crisis, there's the Veteran Crisis Line. So you can call 988, then press 1. You can text 838-255, or you can go to veterancrisisline.net. All of those resources are available 24/7. So if you feel like you're in a crisis at any time, that resource is there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So with that being said, I would love to transition now to the storytelling piece of what we've been trying to do. We've really been working our way up to some storytelling here. And, as a family member that walked indirectly alongside of you, I know even just the stuff we've talked about, it's already started to hit me hard as a family member.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm excited to hear bits and pieces of your story here, Dave.
Yeah, welcome to Storytime with David Nicastro. This will be the first testimony given. Just want to start off by saying that I'm not mentioning anyone by names. I recognize in my family that people did their best. I recognize that they may have learned from their families in the generations past. And people with what they were given and how they were raised, they did their best. They did their best with me and other family members. Gloucester and Cape Ann is a small place. The Nicastro name is known. And so a lot of people watching this may know some of the story already or might not know. But I want to start off with an earliest memory. I bring us back to earliest memories because a lot of us veterans, we just don't get our traumas starting in the military, starting at war or whatever we're going through. Usually can start in the four walls of our own homes. My earliest memory was at 4 years old, and the reason I bring that up is because when you're looking at someone who is supposed to keep you safe, someone that's going to love you, but your first memory is fear, that's a really hard thing to do, and that's where I started building that armor on the inside. And for some of us, we can remember 3, 4, 5 years old because that's when we start to understand language. We're looking at someone and we can hear and understand the words coming out of their mouth. So for me, it did. In my life, it started off really young, and at 4 years old. And then again, as I'm growing, as I'm kind of moving through life, that ADHD guy, that very busy mind. And back then, people struggled with maybe youth that had ADHD, very busy, very active. They're not as knowledgeable back then as they are now. And that was kind of me. And they had trouble how to handle me. I had moved schools a couple times, left O'Malley in 7th grade. They just struggled to know what to do with me. I want to kind of say I am a survivor of sexual abuse in my childhood. I can't remember the exact age, but it was 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And again, I'm saying for my family, it wasn't their fault, just that sometimes there's unsafe people that you're around and no one can really see that kind of wolf in sheep's clothing or that person who is in that place. So again, with my earliest memory and me being a survivor of sexual abuse, the armor is being put around. And my environment at home was you couldn't really talk. Again, it was a very tough male environment where you didn't share anything, stop crying, don't say anything, don't show emotion here. So you don't feel safe to share anything. And that's kind of how I grew up. And I was physically beat in the home too. You know, when fists go to your skull, when fists get hit into a head, that's a really hard thing. And it's more armor being put around and more armor being built. So kind of wanted to get you guys involved in the conversation. Mm-hmm. These are already multiple cuts being put on my moral heart, my moral injury, even before I get into the military. Yeah. So I was being beat up in different ways before I even got into the Marines.
Yeah. And I can speak to, and I'm probably the sensitive, brother out of the Nicastro bunch. Yeah. But even still, I struggle with communication. Absolutely struggle with it. Talking about language, I just don't know how. I just don't know how to communicate. And I've done a lot of work, so I'm better today than I was.
Yes, you are.
Many years ago. But so that place of not knowing how to communicate is tough. It's hard. And again, even being the sensitive one, not knowing how to communicate, I just left all that, whatever I was feeling, built up inside without a way to get it all out. Yeah. So, and I feel like in Gloucester, that's actually pretty common, right? The fisherman mentality, you're strong and, you kind of go on with your day and just keep pumping forward. Mm-hmm. But, and sometimes you have to do that, but also getting it out helps the cause as well.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way. Where we are now versus where the generations were before us. And this is not to blame them for anything. Again, you kind of talked about it, the fisherman class, the war class before us, all these different generations. The American dream has been this idea of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and really just keep plugging along and make things happen. And that's not a bad mentality to live by. But as we learn, the generations before us, again, when we talk about veterans, there was this kind of understanding, if you didn't have a physical wound, you were good. Like, you could move on. The one thing our generation has really provided value to is recognizing what mental health does overall, what it causes to our physical health long term, the detriment to our long term health and our success, passing on those legacies to the next generation. When you have these learned traits, typically you follow the traits that were learned as a child, and how do we stop that? And you kind of bring something up like, oh, I'm the sensitive one. No, we all recognize this. If anything, you're just better prepared to recognize where we may have built this macho bravado that Dave and I are trying to break down a little bit from the Marine Corps, and you're kind of a step ahead of us in recognizing this.
That's good.
And where we move on moving forward. How do we recognize not only the good that previous generations brought in, but where can we do better than what we had? Yeah, this worked for their model when given all the things that were going on for them, but moving forward, if you really wanted to care about the next generation, where can we do better? You always want the next generation to do better. So where can we do better? And it's recognizing mental health and what it causes, and where can we stop some of this, and even some of our maladaptive traits we learned from the Marine Corps. What do we need to forget? What do we need to drop?
Right.
Yeah,
it's just learning from history, right? And as you can see, my history is being painted a certain way, just a product of abuse already. And then kind of moving into my 16 and 17-year-old years, again, that layer of the onion's there, and there's layers of abuse, layers of trauma that already need to be unpacked, and none of it was unpacked. So at that point, about 17, I became a product of divorce. Our family had broken apart. And I didn't process anything because at 17, I'm running into the Marines. At 17, I didn't really have that identity at that foundation. But at 17, I'm going into the Marines, and I have a friend on the other side of the wall that's going to show you some pictures of a young Marine, okay?
that guy.
Oh, my goodness. He's young.
I remember that guy.
I don't know if you want to call that ultra confident, cocky, whatever you want to say, but he's a 17-year-old guy that's really confident, really finding his way in camouflage. And it's like you can even see me now and kind of compare the two. But yeah, I was in the Marine Corps, and because I had struggled so much in my childhood, man, did I excel in the Marine Corps. Ironman out of boot camp, became a squad leader immediately in boot camp. I remember walking down my driveway in Gloucester, looking back at the house at 17 years old, and I had this relief. I couldn't wait to get to Parris Island, South Carolina, to be a recruit. They're very rare. And I was excited when I got there. My excitement in Marine Corps boot camp just carried over to just, wow. When you give all of yourself physically and as a leader, they notice that, and the accolades are there. You're going to be a squad leader. It made me want to run faster, do things crazier. And then the Ironman piece just continued to crush it all. So that just kind of carried my way through. So get into an infantry school. Here we are. This is when we live out in the woods, right? We got camouflage on our face from doing some patrols. Look at that. It's the old school M16 for the Marines that remember that in the 80s and the 90s. And it's like my camouflage isn't even really good because we'd already done patrol, and it kind of meshes in with the sweat, and you just got to clean your weapons and everything. So this is me and my schooling, right? And then the FAST company. And then I kind of talked to you all about that terrorist bombing. On August 7, 1998, it was the biggest attack on American soil because an embassy is considered sovereignty in American soil. And here we are. This is the American embassy bombing. This is it's where there's rubble. There's people from all over the world coming in because remember, instantly a car bomb had exploded on the embassy. And the embassy was able to withstand the structural explosion, but the bank behind it did not. So this is a Kenyan-owned bank you're looking at, and instantly there were many hundreds trapped under the rubble, and 4,000 were instantly injured. And against this was planned by Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, trained within the boundaries of Afghanistan with help of the Taliban. And this was the biggest terrorist attack in history to this point. And Dar es Salaam, Tanzania was hit, and Nairobi, Kenya was hit within minutes of each other, similar to 9/11. Yeah, so this is my pictures from an elevated position looking down on the rubble. This next picture is now getting a little bit closer through the concertina wire we had to put up because we have to separate sovereign soil. We have to separate the embassy from the bank so the investigation can now be conducted by diplomatic forces, FBI, and whoever to find out more about this. So we had to put a wall, right, just a concertina wire to separate the rescue workers, Kenyans, and anyone doing the work from us. And we're just keeping it secure so someone can come in and do a little bit more of an investigation. Within the embassy itself, you can see underneath a couple of the cars that had been exploded or hit by the bomb, a couple of rooms and hallways. We had to go room to room. We had to go and search every single room within the embassy. There's top secret material. We're looking for bodies and looking for people. And as you can see, there is blood on the walls. There is people who were moving through, attempting to get out safe. Just different pitches. And I've looked at these many times. It's still just so unbelievable to look that if you can imagine yourself in their shoes when this was happening. An explosion, the walls get blown, the windows get blown out. It's just this auditory exclusion of you can't quite hear, and this numbing in your ears, and kind of concussion of I don't really know what's going on because your brain has been hit by it, and you're just kind of walking like a zombie through everything, trying to find safety. This is what this bombing was to a lot of people that have given testimony. And as a Marine, we just flip a switch, get the mission, separate the scene, go room to room, and let's start finding things, And myself and my buddy Ricky Vela, we went from room to room, from top to bottom. The bottom of the embassy was complete diesel fuel up to your ankles because the generator had been hit and the generator leaked down into the bottom. And we found all that diesel fuel. So now you're looking at the possible, it could go up in flames. So we found it. We had gas masks on, pitch dark, and going down there with lights. And we're like, wow, the bottom of the embassy is completely filled with diesel fuel. And then as you work your way up, you're finding, blood and just pieces and stuff. And this is kind of after that 70-day mark when they finally completed and you guys saw the rubble. This is now a complete clearing in the middle of the scene. There is no more rubble. There are no more bodies. It took 70 days to completely clear the scene. And I'm a Marine standing there in the middle of it. And the smells of were just intense, right? You're just thinking of what could the smell be like. Well, one, you're in Nairobi, Kenya, in Africa. But two, all the smoke, the bodies that had been there long term. It had a distinct smell. And I know a lot of veterans can talk about the distinct smells in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam that can bring us back. And these types of smells you don't quite get anywhere else except in a war zone or combat-like situation. And I know Adam knows that when in Afghanistan, that place had a distinct smell,
Yes, I can actually remember as a family member. I can remember hearing the stories of you being in Kenya, and even though I was just for a point of reference, Dave is 10 years older than me. So when you were 17, 18, I was 7 or 8, not even or barely double digits. So I could just remember family members communicate or just trying to let me know what's going on without giving me too much information. But you can just feel and hear in their voices the trembling. You can feel in the environment of the home that it doesn't feel like he's in a safe place. So even being just at a young age, barely double digits, I knew you were in a dangerous place, and I didn't know how to process that. I didn't know what to do with that information. Like when you said you were walking down the driveway, excited about leaving, as your family members, we were terrified. We were scared.
Yeah,
honestly.
There were a lot of tears that day. I remember that. There was a lot of crying. I remember the last day when the recruiter comes in his dress blues to take you away from your family. And there was crying. There was even tears on my side because I was missing what I knew. Even though I told you there was trauma in my childhood, it's all we know, and it wasn't all bad. It was good too. But I remember once I got outside of that home, the relief I felt, and I was just excited for the new adventure, the new journey.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam must have a similar story of like, wow, we're going into this, the Marines.
Yeah, I think, again, both my grandfathers were military. One was Navy, one was a Marine. I had every, ounce of desire to follow in their footsteps. So I think going to Paris Island for me was kind of like I'm finally doing it. I'm finally on that journey that I've been waiting for. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to some of the fears, definitely the fears that exist. You're going in the military. And, again, I think when you went in probably peacetime.
1996.
Didn't happen.
Yep.
Didn't last very long, but it
Right.
was peacetime when you went in.
Right.
Versus when I went in, Iraq and Afghanistan were already on. But there is a certain fear of joining the military that exists, regardless of whether it's peacetime or wartime. You are committed to this for the next 4 years at minimum, and you're going to some unknown adventure, whether you're looking forward to it or not. It is still scary.
It's an interesting point. Yeah, like when I went in, there wasn't a war occurring. Again, I was an anti-terrorism Marine, went through the training, didn't quite understand what that meant. But like Adam said, there was a war going on when he went in. A lot of you veterans understand that there's the possibility I'm going to either of those war zones or something else. I didn't have that. So as I was going in, it's not like, oh, I'm going to Iraq or Afghanistan. No, it's a step at a time. I'm going to Paris Island, South Carolina for boot camp. Then after that, I'm going to this for my infantry training. Oh, then I just got invited to security force to guard nuclear weapons. Oh, I just got plucked from that school to go to an anti-terrorism unit. So for me, that wasn't an exact war. This one, when I graduated the anti-terrorism unit, we were being deployed to Manama, Bahrain, which is an island off of Saudi Arabia. We would be stationed there for approximately 6 to 7 months, responsible for 15 countries. Within 2 days, that was Nairobi, Kenya. It completely capped off within 2 days. So from Manama, Bahrain, within hours, we're in Nairobi, Kenya. It's so surreal, right? In the military, you can go on deployment. Something can happen, right? So I'm in the Middle East. It's as bright as you could believe. It's warm. The buildings are always light. I'm just always like this with my eyes. And I get on a plane, and I get to Nairobi, Kenya at nighttime. It's like a time machine. And I remember getting off. We do 360-degree security. Our weapons are pointed outboard. We get on a vehicle. Now we got to drive the 35 minutes to Nairobi, Kenya. I look to my left while on the bus, which is completely wide open, and there's a giraffe running alongside our bus.
Wow.
Tell me that isn't surreal. I've never ran with a giraffe,
so
and this thing is following the bus. I'm like, yeah, we're in Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow.
Is that amazing? And there's a lot of that. Like there were monkeys that I saw, and just all these animals. And then the poor. I've never seen such poor in my life with a third world country like Africa. Africa is the most poor I'd ever experienced, and I've been to 20-plus countries in this world. But I also want to express right after Nairobi, Kenya was a different type of combat or zone. So, Cam's going to put up a couple pictures of the Balkans. And kind of right after
And give it one click.
Africa, and I've got a clicker, and so they're making me in charge. So when I tell you Cam, I guess I mean me, and I have to push a button while talking. But as you can see, this is the Balkans. This is a Macedonian Kosovo embassy where you can see bullet holes and Molotov cocktails are being thrown there. They were rioting. They were asking us for help and not liking the situation. So this was my next mission right after Africa, American embassy, as you can see. And I had to block out some faces and stuff because you can't know who these guys are because they haven't given me permission. But also, you're not supposed to. But that's me, again, a young kid, all decked out in my gear. But given everything that I did in the military, and then later on I did VBS operations, which is operations on ships, and we were to root out possible gun transfers and terrorists who were being sent from Africa to Afghanistan and Iraq during enduring freedom. It wasn't all bad. Again, I went to 20-plus countries. I've been to Europe, Asia, and here's me in Japan. That's pretty cool with the geisha women, and look how beautiful the colors. Japan was a positive trip. It was a beautiful trip. Again, I'm just taking pictures everywhere I go to kind of, and it wasn't a picture on the phones we have nowadays. It was an actual camera where I had to push a button, and then I had to go to double exposure here in
gonna say.
Gloucester or anywhere to get it.
I picture those Kodak.
Yeah,
cameras.
this is how we did it back in the day, young generation. This is Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany, whereas Walt Disney went there and said, I want my castle to look like that. So again, this was that castle. This is kind of mirrored after the Walt Disney castle, and this is in Germany. Just a beautiful castle. It was just amazing. The other countries we can see, while in the military. If anyone who's been to Italy knows what the Colosseum looks like on the inside. Here I am in Rome. I lived in Italy for just over a year. Like, this is beautiful. I just loved Italy, the architecture, the sculptures, the piazzas, how you can sit outside and people watch at the different restaurants, and it's all in circular. And then Fox News. I was a young, cocky SWAT team guy and jumped on a news station because they asked us to come in. And you can see she got a little too close to me. That was, young Marine there. But I don't know why I needed to put that picture up there. But it wasn't all bad. The years I did in the military, the years we did, it can sometimes be bad when you're on mission. But there's also some really good. And if some of you had only been in war zone, is if all you knew was bad, there's good in the bad. Like me and Adam talked about the night skies in the Middle East. You had never seen such beautiful night skies in your life. I mean, Adam, bring us back to some of those night skies and what the good was in war zones.
Yeah, I mean, when you look up, in a country like Afghanistan and there's no lights anywhere, you look up at that sky, you don't see so many stars. How many stars and how small we really are in the world, It's funny when, people always ask me what I think about Afghanistan. And I was like, it is a beautiful country.
Yes,
beautiful,
it is.
Beautiful country.
Yes,
Ancient, beautiful country. And people are like, really? That's what you think? Yeah, that's what I think of it. It is just an experience like no other.
Yeah, and I'm about to bring up some pictures of my time in clandestine operations. This is my first one. So when I was doing clandestine, so it's undercover operations over there. This is in Iraq, and I have a translator, as you can see on the screen directly to my left, and a couple of operators on the outside. And now I'm starting to build up my body. I look like a Rambo. Again, you put the muscles on, and you just think you're a Rambo, and you're trying to impose your physical being on an enemy, whatever you're doing psychologically. But that's kind of what we were doing, right? You make yourself look a certain way, and you're operating undercover. Look at another Rambo photo, just pretty ridiculous, right? And we take photos like this because we think we're cool and all that. But you know what? It's being young 20-something-year-old. I was single. I am away from my family. You're in a war zone. This was downtown Baghdad, and we're having to operate almost every day in missions and stuff. So you have to put on this kind of I'm not afraid. It's putting on that internal armor. You already have your external armor on, and all the guns and the AT-4 in the background, and the saws, and we have 240s there, and all these different weapons. It's just everything to keep you safe, right? What we believe is to keep us safe out there. This is one of my favorite photos. These are the cross swords on the parade deck of Saddam Hussein. You'll see some writing at the top of those swords, and it was basically Saddam had said, I am to rule this nation with an iron fist. The hands on the sword are his actual hands. He had a professional sculptor come in, and he put his hands on that sword. Those are Saddam's hands. At the bottom, all the way at the end, there are Iranian helmets from the very long war, that the Iraq-Iran war, and he littered the whole bottom with Iranian helmets. I mean, the sculptures over there and what it was, I mean, this is Saddam Hussein just beautifying his whole area, and now we have control of all of his castles, his paradise, every single one of his areas and homes, and we, as America, have complete control. This is within the green zone. I have another photo. I think I'm pushing the button. This is me living downtown. This is a beautiful mosque. You just see the beauty of their sculptures and how they have it. This mosque, I got to look at it every single day. I lived in what was called the red zone, outside of the green zone. I lived amongst the people. I had a respect for the area and a respect for the people, because I had to learn the area and how it looks when a marketplace is busy to when it's not so busy, because this is now telling us something of the area. So I learned to love the different sculptures and the beauty of it. This is the Tigris River. I mean, within a desert, within the Middle East, there's greenery, there's water, there's the Euphrates, the Tigris, the Diyala. There's some beauty in the Middle East, like Adam said. This is downtown Baghdad, and how do people view it? I mean, it's got green, it's got water, there's vegetation, there's irrigation. Again, in the wrong hands, it can completely tear apart a people, because with Saddam Hussein, he was very rich, his people were very rich, everyone else was very poor. And that's usually what it is in the Middle East with Taliban and Saddam Hussein. So now this is where I live. This was my home. I'm on the top of a building taking a picture. These are homes in front of me of regular Iraqis, to the right, to the left, and off to the distance. This is not the green zone. I lived in the red zone for a long period of time. What that did was, yep, I was hyper vigilant. I always knew what was around me. From street to street, you could hear fighting occurring. The green zone was not that far away from me, maybe 10 minutes away. But I had a natural respect for what was outside of the green zone. I say this because for a lot of the veterans who never lived in a red zone and lived within a base, a safe base in a green zone, there's that fear of what's on the outside, the fear of the red zone. And it's constant, because I always had that constant hypervigilance. And this leads me to kind of one of those attacks, is that when I got on a team that didn't necessarily know what the red zone was, every time we went out into the red zone on missions, there was a lot of fear by some guys. And I started to be anxious, not only about what I was in on a mission, but anxious about my own guys. And this occurred on a couple of my earlier teams. And I think me and Adam know that sometimes there can be war crimes that are committed overseas. It's something we see. It's something we know. I definitely seen it when a couple of my guys kind of lost their mind and started hating the color of a skin. They started to hate even kids with that color of the skin. They started to hate the women, the men. And when you go out and operate with them, I had a natural respect for it because I lived in it. I'm watching people commit war crimes, and that was really hard. I started having guilt, survivor's guilt, of watching innocent people pass away. It was part of my mental crash, was going into memories where I watched a little girl get put down. And as I have a little girl, it really challenged me. And that little girl being cradled by her dad, and then we take off from the mission, was one of the hardest things I ever had to go through in therapy. And having to take that guilt out, right? I had that shame. I had that guilt. I'm less of an operator. I just watched this occur. It just rips at your heart when you see when people pass away at war, like military members. That's hard enough. But it's something where we understand they consummated this ultimate sacrifice. They shed that blood and they died for their country, for their comrades to the right and left. But the innocent people, there's no rules at war. So when innocent people die and they pass away, that's something that's really hard to stomach. And that was really hard to stomach for me. And it was like, as time went on and I didn't process it, it was like my insides and my soul and everything was just melting away and dying.
Even as someone in the community or even just as a family member, I just could not fathom what that feels like or what you've gone through. So my heart, and even as you say it, my heart goes out to that family.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, right? When you look at it, you know, when you and I had talked about it a little bit, when it comes to the service member kind of working through losing service members while in the service,
Yeah.
there's no time.
That's right.
For actual closure. You had talked about it when we talked last time about, you know, brief memorial services while in country or while in theater, things that go on, and how different that is from a natural funeral and being connected with kind of the whole community, kind of paying respects to an individual. That there's really no real closure for a military service member. What does that do to us? You know, 1 minute, you know, that brethren that you were talking about is to the left or right, is not there anymore. And then you kind of just, they're not there. You kind of pack up their stuff. You watch their stuff get boxed up, and then they're just not there anymore. Some of us don't even get closure on that end because you just never see anything after that. It's just they're gone.
Yeah.
And then you kind of talked about it, you know, just maintaining our humanity in a war zone and how hard that can be. Again, you know, day in and day out of operations, trying to just maintain humanity. And what good and bad has just become blurred.
That's right.
And, you just start to, it's very possible people start going down a dark path. And it's, very easy to slip down that dark path when you talk about, things that happen in war. And, just maintaining that human dignity can become really clouded.
Yeah, really clouded. And kind of Adam talked about the death of friends. I mean, I'm about to show you a picture of my friend Jeff, who died in Fallujah. That's one of Saddam's palaces right there. So just kind of the beauty. You see still the greenery and everything like that. This is kind of a list of the Marines I served with that passed away. And as you can see, different areas they passed away. So Jeffrey Kirk was my best friend. He was a sergeant, fellow squad leader with me at the anti-terrorism unit. When you see Al-Anbar province, that is Fallujah, those areas. And he's my best friend, man. He knew the insurgents were in the home, and he led his men. He didn't say, go do that. He said, come follow me. And he was the first one in that house. You just look how young we are, man. And this is America's most physically fit, just the most courageous that are going to just go into a home with insurgents, right? I mean, are you kidding me? That's just what you're trained to do, and you just don't stop. This is me and him on a trip to Italy, right? That's me and him just being civilians, if you will. When you get time to get away from the military, you put on civilian clothes and you get out there. This is me and him just on nights out. This is my buddy Robert Pohl. He was killed in Basra down south by a car bomb. And so he was also in the same platoon. And then like Adam said, to the left and right, now we have two guys that are gone. This was my first team leader, right? He was the one I said, he's my best. He's going to be the team leader. And then next to Robert Pohl on my left, behind him is Sean Martin. He was also in that squad. And it's just another guy down, right? So now you're looking at to the right, to the left, and behind you as they just keep adding up. It's just really hard. As they keep adding up, it's just really hard. We never process it. I remember as every guy got killed, for a moment, you think about him and what are you doing? I do remember crying for Jeff because of how much it hurt. And then the first sergeant coming in, but yeah, we all have guys who die, man. Just get it out, but we got to get ready to operate tomorrow. You got to flip the switch on to do a new mission tomorrow. The longer you're in a war zone, the more missions you do. It just hurts. And it's that survivor's guilt as, why am I alive? These guys are passing away. What am I doing alive? You're questioning. It's missing me. It's all around me. I remember just surviving my first car bomb, right? It's just for those who, for the veterans who know what it is to survive a car bomb, but for the civilians who don't, imagine 128. You travel on either side, and you're watching a car on the opposite direction on the same highway. So if we're on 128 North going into Gloucester, the car's coming towards you as you're on the highway. This is happening on Baghdad Road, Bayap Road in downtown Baghdad. It's a fast highway, 10 minutes from the airport to the green zone. And this car was coming towards us, and as our convoy got there, it went off, and the vehicle in front lost 5 people instantly. I mean, when you look at the mushroom cloud and the flame, 3 stories, 4 stories high, it was like slow motion. I'm like, wow, look at that car coming the wrong way on a highway. That doesn't make sense. And then the car gets close, and it just goes up. And so you're seeing that, and you're feeling that, and you're going through the smoke. You don't quite know what's happening exactly. You get into a safe zone, the green zone, recognizing one car is not there, recognizing upon more investigation that they're not there, recognizing why did it hit them and not me. You just second guessing everything. And in a way, the longer you're in war and the amount of pain you're dealing with, and sometimes you're hoping it's you because you're losing so many good people. There's so much pain at war. You're like, man, when's it my turn? Man, I wish it was my turn. How do I even deal with this? The longer you're in a war zone. And for me, I ended up going to war in Iraq May 2004. And I ended up leaving Afghanistan in December 2014. So in that 10-year span, I was within the borders of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I have it written down, 4 years, 108 days, just within those borders. And I look back and I go, what? How did I do this, man? it was just flipping a switch. I was completely numb. There was bad everywhere. There was good some places. I can remember and look back at the good, but the amount of hypervigilance and the amount of terror and feelings of war was all around me. And I must have survived 30 to 40 plus attacks of mortar, RPG, ambushes, car bombs, and I'm sitting there going, how am I still here? It's a mind-blowing thing.
Yeah. So I want to honor your experiences, Dave, because I've been told bits and pieces of it all, but have never actually gotten a timeline version of the story, really. Mental health is not my expertise, but I just thank you so much for telling your story and for allowing us to hear these bits and pieces of your story. Now, what I want to go to as far as bridging the gap.
Yeah.
What would you say to 17, 18, 19-year-old Dave knowing what he's about to go through?
Wow. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, when I was doing all that stuff, you can't really process it. It's something that it's really hard to do, is to process while you're on mission. Because if I'm sitting there opening up all the pain, I might be a bubbling mess that might not be able to do his job and his mission. It's so hard. I would want to tell someone wanting to go in the military, I would let them know, I want to know where their heart's at and where their mind's at, because you got to know what you're getting into. And this is possibly what you can see. And in the end, is it worth it, right? Because remember, we talked about my early childhood. I have all this trauma, and then you go into the military and you pack all this trauma, and if it's not being processed, it leaves you later on in life a complete mess inside, shut down, not communicating, depressed, suicidal ideologies, just a complete mess of a person. I would say that you're going to go through a lot of hard things, but there will be a time where you need to process this. There must be an outlet. There has to be an outgoing process to get it all out. And just get ready for that time, because it's not easy and it's really hard. And it's going to hurt, and that's okay. There's going to be people that are going to walk by your side through it. Yeah.
So one of the things that, and again, I think you bring it up when you talk about the fast companies, I did read an article not too long ago that I think it was Recon was doing mindfulness training. So can you imagine adding that into what you were doing, right? So you talk about this high tempo all the time. This is what's going on. And at that time in the Marine Corps, you're not given any kind of attention towards your mental health and what is this doing to that glass, that hypothetical glass we talked about with trauma. But, and again, this was an article that I read that they are kind of addressing some of these mental health concerns, how much this has come to the forefront, and understanding, if we want our troops to be most effective, we have to recognize the traumas that they're dealing with. And, I wish I'll find the article for you.
Please.
But, they're doing mindfulness training. They're learning these breathing techniques. They're learning how to process this and just take a moment for themselves to realize the space they're in and what that does. And again, I wonder when, Andrew brought up about what would you tell, 18, 19-year-old, don't foo-foo the mindfulness thing. I think what I would tell 18 or 19-year-old me, or even 18, 19-year-old, because at that point, we're going to look at it and be like, no, I'm good, I'm tough. I don't need to worry about my mental health.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything I could go back, recognize it. I get it. The age you're at,
that's right,
the place you're at in your mind, you are not going to realize what this is going to do to you down the road. But you're also not going to recognize what this is going to do to your family and to your children. So recognize it now, be aware of it now, because in the long term, it's only going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit the relationship you have with your wife and your kids.
Right.
Yeah, I think I love that. I had no idea they would do mindfulness training. As soon after a trauma, it should be recognizing what just happened. I would love it if someone can guide and facilitate. So whether it's a mental health professional or a squad leader who's trained in it, saying, guys, that car bomb, that ambush, that trauma with seeing an innocent girl pass away, that's really hard. And we need to sit here for some time, and we need to process this together. Know that it was hard. That is a trauma. It's okay to feel a certain way. That was sad. We're going to get it out together. and then we're going to come back together and see how we can move forward with missions moving forward. But we need to do this all the time as a group and a family. I couldn't imagine if we did that as a squad or a platoon, and someone who was trained in it, or even a solid figure could lead people through that.
Right.
That would have had so much, that would have had a benefit for all of us in that time. So I love hearing that they're doing that, and what a change. Because just flipping a switch, saying you get back and all the adrenaline's now running, it's running out of you, and you're completely exhausted, and you're just passing out or numbing with whatever ways you can find in a war zone. It's imagining doing it in the right way and actually processing what occurred. And you'd feel better, I bet, after. Again, I never had that. Now knowing that's what I'm doing anyway, yeah, I would love to do that with someone, even veterans that have been through the traumas of war, even things I've shared, to notice that it's hard, that it was hard. And I just, again, want to go back to what it feels like to have the depression on you now. And I just wanted to give words to it and feelings. I didn't come home very well. You know, I struggled. I felt like I was drowning. I had a past riddled with trauma, okay? But major depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, these are a lot of the things we feeling. We feel that knife in our stomach. It's like a two-edged sword going up and down, like a big boulder on a chest. We can't breathe. From day to day, it's like a fog over our mind. We hardly think. We can't think. We just feel lethargic. Just going through another day, trying to get through it, flipping a switch to be a husband, a dad, whatever job you're doing, whatever you feel like your identity is. These are the feelings we go through. And we have this torment and this pain inside that we want to end. And that does not mean ending your life is the answer. We understand, and I understood, I want this torment, this pain, and everything to end now. But that does not mean suicide. It doesn't mean that. I'm so grateful I never did it. For the men who have been through struggles like that and that darkness, we know that every night it can be really loud. It's separating that, understanding that there are tools, resources, and people to guide the process of wanting the pain and the torment inside to stop and end. And it does not mean taking your own life. So we want veterans to recognize that's really important.
Yeah, which brings us, you know, I guess this is a perfect time to talk about, again, that veteran crisis line. You know, that is there for those situations if you're dealing with a crisis. And I love how, Adam, you educated us on, it used to be called Veteran Suicide Line, but they changed it to Veteran Crisis Line because it goes beyond, it felt like if they were trying to address suicide alone, they were almost too late. They had to get ahead of it with crisis. Am I hitting that right?
Yeah, that really kind of sums it up. Again, you know, when you hear veterans suicide, well, I'm not suicidal. I'm not there yet. Or, you know, what have you. When you open up to crisis, it opens it up for anything. How are you feeling? And it's kind of recognizing that everybody's on a unique path, right? So when you take crisis, it's everything on that line. So it's whatever's bothering you at that time. One of the things we have to recognize is that every story is unique.
Yeah.
You know, so when you hear, you know, as a veteran, when you hear Dave's story, and you know, one of the problems we have is humans is we compare ourselves to others. So you know, if this is all the stuff that Dave went through, my experience isn't as bad.
That's right.
So I should stop worrying about what is happening to me because Dave's experience is so much worse.
Glad you
And we
brought
have
that up.
such a bad habit of that as humans, to really kind of compare ourselves, and we just really need to take a moment to recognize that all our experience is all unique. So your trauma is your trauma. It's not in comparison to anybody else's. It's your experience, and you need to recognize it how you see fit and not compare it to somebody else's. If it's bothering you, it's bothering you.
That's right.
And all these tools and methods are out there to help you with it, and use them. And you know, don't see Dave's experience as, you know, the foundation. If I don't meet that threshold, that I shouldn't need help. No, it's your experience.
Right.
And Dave's just here sharing that story, so it connects and helps, and serves a purpose to help other veterans, and there's a purpose in healing yourself, but it not as a comparison tool.
That's
We're
right.
all very unique.
That's right. It's independent of my story. Every story is different. You may feel one of those symptoms, and that still means there's work to be done. It doesn't have to mean you've been in any attacks. Some people that were veterans who stayed stateside have survivor's guilt because they didn't do enough, they feel in their heart. They didn't go to war, and men came back either amputees or with injuries, or they've passed away. I've heard that in the Welcome Home Initiative. Guys are suicidal because they didn't do their part at war. And I was just blown away, and I go, man, you did your part. Your story is not my story. Adam brought up to have a purpose, and I've heard him say it multiple times. Veterans, we need a purpose. We need that hope. We had that purpose in the military. We had that purpose in certain parts of our life. What is your purpose? You know, we want to get you back to the part where you're not feeling the internal struggle so deeply and intensely, but move you to a point where, okay, I have purpose. I'm doing well as a dad again. I'm seeing my children in a whole new light. I'm taking a deep breath, and I'm able to go to counseling, or I'm connecting with my wife. Like, these are all really good things, and it's moving you back to that place of I have purpose. We struggled. We struggled coming back into the civilian world. We were mission-minded men and women. We were in the military. We had this identity, and we struggled to come home and implement and connect into a regular job, into being a full-time dad and husband, and know that that comes with physical effects too. If we're struggling mentally sometimes, it now comes and it's affecting us physically. For me, I was able to go to home base in Boston for 7 months. Like it's one of the best places, I think, in the country for mental health. And they accepted me in. I did 7 months of awesome therapy there. In the end, for me, my purpose and hope was in a spiritual freedom. You know, for me, it was finding God, or God finding me. So for a lot of veterans, and I know that Narcotics Anonymous, AA, it's that higher power gives them a lot of the purpose. For me, it was a higher power. For me, it was saying the name of Jesus Christ, and him saying, I've got you. So take that off of you, that rock, and put it on me. And that's ultimately, in the end, what kind of worked for me. And I'm facilitating groups of men right now. I'm guiding groups and addiction groups. And my purpose is, I've been through hell, a type of hell, from childhood to this point. I have been divorced myself. Not only did I get it in the childhood, my marriage didn't work out. I can't see my kids all the time. Being part of the D Club, that divorce club, is a really hard club to be a part of when you thought things forever just kind of melted and became sand, and it's not forever. But right now, I'm a better version of a father than I've ever been, and it's because of the new change in me, and everyone can do it. They can do it. It's hard work, but they can do it. And this is my story. This is what worked for me, and I'm the best version of myself I've ever been, and I love that I'm the best father that I've ever been, and I love my children, I love my family, and I love where I'm at. I don't regret anything that's happened, because it brought me to this point where I can help veterans. The purpose of cleaning my life up, bettering my life, to be able to speak to veterans, give language for the emotions we have, and say, I want to help. I want to be there. Come talk to us, and let's guide the process.
You're amazing, man. You're amazing.
Brother.
And to build off of Adam's point, there's no comparison here. We all have our own story. And what you built, Dave, was a beautiful template on how to tell a story. So, you know, again, I'll hit the call to action about reaching out to us and emailing us. If you would like to email us and connect with us so that you could learn how to tell your story, we would love to help you. Dave would love to help you. That's become part of his purpose, is helping veterans to tell their story and finding that language and having a format. Because that's what that was. That was a format from beginning to your current purpose, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So please email us at bridgingthegapvetspodcast@gmail.com. And that goes to the three of us. And just connect and say, hey, I would love to be able to tell my story to you three, even if it's just us alone, or even just Dave alone. That's a great start. If you feel compelled to go to the Veterans Coffee Social, 8:30 to 10 a.m. every Friday at the Cape Band Veteran Services office in Gloucester. That's where Adam is, and that's where Adam's team is, and a lot of amazing individuals are there. Or you can reach out to Cape Band Veteran Services directly if you'd like to talk to Adam or his team. I guess anything else we want to add here, gentlemen? I mean, awesome session. This is what it's all about.
Well, I like storytelling. That's I know there's healing in it, and that's been my thing. Is that the amount of healing I've done has always been through story and getting it out. For some veterans, that's not what it is. It could be artwork or music or journaling, whatever it is. For me, it was journaling and telling a story. So, yeah, I mean, Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your story, because sometimes it's never easy to share it. You know, a lot of times we're kind of raised in that atmosphere of the Marine Corps to, you know, suck it up and move on, and that's how we have to be. So it takes a lot to take a step back and recognize this, and it does a lot of good for ourselves, but it does a lot of good for others. The template you just put forward, I'm sure is going to impact individuals that are watching this to say, I can tell my story too. I'm not alone, and that's the biggest piece of this is, you know, all those veterans watching this, you know, that can relate. You know, you're not alone. We all share this in our own form of capacity that, you know, we can take this, and you are kind of at the forefront, a leader, and saying, you know, let me tell my story. Let me be the first to make myself vulnerable for the betterment of everybody else. And again, that's your purpose.
Appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate
Thank you. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
I want to say that too. Semper Fi.
You can.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. Always faithful.
Next month, we're going to have a mental health professional come on in. I just think after this podcast, once someone tells a story, we're going to have someone come in and talk about mental health and actually connect the dots. And I know that is not just for veterans. That's for everyone in this time who is feeling a certain way, who needs resources. This person is going to be able to talk about it, answer questions, and provide more resources for family members and veterans. So that's going to be a really exciting one to actually get someone in here who's going to talk about it.
Yep. So feels like a good time to close, right? Feels like a safe time to do that.
Perfect.
So, folks, thank you so much. Bridging the Gap Veterans Podcast, Episode 3 is concluded here. We thank you so much for tuning in, and also share this, please. If there's anyone that could benefit from seeing this video, share it with them, or on Spotify, share it. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.